Hello, everyone, and welcome to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and our Aviation Outlook webinar. I'm Alan Stolzer, Dean of the College of Aviation at the Daytona Beach campus. We're glad you could join us for our second webinar of 2021, and we've got a great program tonight. To introduce tonight's guest, please welcome President of Embry-Riddle, Dr. P. Barry Butler.
It is my great pleasure to introduce a highly respected aviation leader, an Embry-Riddle graduate, and a member of our Board of Trustees, Mr. Steve Nordlund. If you follow industry news, you know Steve as the voice of the Boeing Company when it comes to urban air mobility. He has a gift for clarifying complex issues from research to the safe integration of airspace to public-private collaboration. He has led teams at Boeing that are at the forefront of urban mobility development, tackling the technology, acceptance, and economics that will drive its future. He is a great advocate for emerging technologies that will change the way we live, and for our graduates in particular, innovation that will inspire careers. As you will hear, Steve's career itself is an inspiration. IBM, in situ, and Boeing all appear on his resume. So does Embry-Riddle as his alma mater. He spent 8 years as our Chief Information Officer. Since joining Boeing, he has led projects that span the commercial and defense businesses and founded teams that are sparking innovations to lead the company through its second century. Our Board of Trustees benefits from his insights into the research and development priorities for the industry. Steve serves on our business partnerships and our flight safety committees. I always value Steve's perspective. I'm glad you have this opportunity to hear from him directly. Steve?
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Steve has just recently accepted a new position at Boeing as Vice President and General Manager of Phantom Works, which is the advanced prototyping arm of the defense and security side of Boeing. Its primary focus is developing advanced products and technologies, many of which are highly classified. Phantom Works also comes up with some of the coolest names for their aircraft, like the Phantom Eye, the Waverider, Bird of Prey, Phantom Ray, the Active Aeroelastic Wing, and there is the conventionally named but mysterious X-37B Space Plane. Most recently, Steve was Vice President and General Manager of Boeing Next, an organization that was created to lay the foundation for a next-generation mobility ecosystem in which autonomous and piloted vehicles can safely coexist. Prior to leading Boeing Next, Steve served as founder and vice president of Boeing Horizon X. By leveraging the power of the world's largest aerospace company, Horizon X applies its momentum to new business ventures to unlock the next generation of game-changing ideas, products, and markets. In fact, Steve was instrumental in bringing the Horizon X program to Embry-Riddle's John Mica Engineering and Aerospace Innovation Complex to help support growing Micaplex businesses while enriching the technology and business environment Embry-Riddle provides for our faculty and students. Steve Nordlund, welcome to Aviation Outlook. It sounds like we've got a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to cover, Alan. It's a pretty dynamic time in our industry. It's exciting in a lot of ways. And we got to keep our seatbelts on because I think there's a lot to come.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for taking the time this evening. I know our audience is going to get a lot out of your comments and your wisdom. So let me just jump right in and ask you a few questions. Like most companies in the aerospace sector, Boeing experienced some challenges in 2020. It is the world's largest aerospace company and this country's largest exporter. How is the company doing now as it navigates the global pandemic?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Alan. And I would say, our challenges started well before 2020. We will never forget the two flights, Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Flight 302, and the 346 passengers who lost their lives on those flights. It was a very tragic, both days were very tragic. And it's something that, especially us from Embry-Riddle, who take so much pride in safety, it's just an event that we never ever want to have happen again. And it started a reflection for this company, one that was definitely needed, one for us to recommit to safety and what it means to aviation and aerospace. And we'll talk about that today, I'm sure. So I won't dwell on it too much right now, but I certainly want to recognize it because it's the most important thing that we do. I don't think we realize, you start to realize it. I mean, what I love about Embry-Riddle and when I'm walking around campus is how we start to instill safety of flight at the moment that a student arrives on campus, and it follows through. You can see that, this year, if you look at the statistics around how the university has handled the pandemic this year compared to other higher education institutions, and it just goes to show, it reinforces the culture that we have of safety and taking care of one another. And let me just tell you, that is something that has to be in our core values, and it has to live through and through all of us as we venture on in this industry. So I definitely don't want to overlook, the period of time that we were in started well before COVID-19 happening. And it was a long journey working hand in hand with the regulators to get to where we are today on the 737 MAX and reintroducing it back into the airspace, which has gone relatively well so far, but every day matters. And we're focused on it absolutely every day. With regards to COVID, it definitely has been an incredible hit, not just to Boeing, but obviously the entire industry. I'm optimistic on the bounce back. It's just every day we're starting to hear some better news with regard to the third vaccine coming online, improvements on distribution, willingness for the vaccine, very low information on negative results from the vaccine. So there's a lot of bright spots, and we know that is definitely a key to the return for travel. But it has been hard. It has been a real journey for us as a company, both the MAX, which created a lot of soul searching for us, and then weathering and navigating the storm through COVID has been a real journey. I'm optimistic that we're getting on to the other side of that. However, it's going to be a long journey to grow back. If you look historically at events that occur, shocks to the aviation system, the attacks of 9/11, the financial hit of 2008. I don't think COVID-19 comes as close to at least the 2008 financial hit as what we're seeing today. But what we find is there's resiliency in air travel, and we see a return and a continued growth pattern that continues. So we know how to recover from these shocks to the system. But it's something that is going to definitely take some time. And there's just been a lot of change going on around our company to adjust to the new environment that we're in. But at the same time, we also have to be poised for the return of travel and the return to flight. So that's on the commercial side of our business. And then on the defense side of our business, which becomes critically important to Boeing right now, as we work through a new administration, there's changes going on. Geopolitical changes going on across the world, how we respond to our international customers, continuing to innovate to the threats that can be provided to our country and its allies. So the defense business could not be any more important to Boeing than it is today, both as our commercial business recovers, but more importantly, how we serve our customer going forward with all the innovation that's going to be needed to make sure that the United States continues to have its dominance.
Excellent. You articulated that so well, and this is an amazingly resilient industry. And we've seen that time and time again in the past, and I'm confident we'll see that going forward, as you've stated. I'm always in awe of the number of Boeing aircraft operated by cargo carriers around the world. FedEx and UPS operate 465 Boeing aircraft. There must be some level of pride knowing that Boeing aircraft are transporting vaccines, PPE, and other important supplies during the pandemic.
Yeah, we've been working closely with our customers, not just on those logistics, Alan, but also, especially with vaccines like the Pfizer vaccine, where we got to make sure that the temperatures, stay at the right level to transport those, and how we package the cargo, and what our aircraft are capable of doing, and how they play a role in that entire logistics change. It has been, certainly, a humbling moment for us to be part of that. And, one of the things that, we do as a company is we produce products that typically when there's something that goes wrong in the world, one of our products is usually first on the scene. And we take a lot of pride in that. Our employees take a lot of pride on that. I mean, if you see, unfortunately, a world disaster happening, whether it's a avalanche, a typhoon, it's usually a CH-47 Chinook or a V-22 that is, first on scene to provide aid and other supplies to those in need. And we take that responsibility very seriously. And we're very fortunate and honored to be part of the operations going forward with our customers who've also, UPS, FedEx, as you mentioned, just doing outstanding work. And it really goes beyond just, the obvious, the vaccine distribution, the PPE that you mentioned. But we also have to remember that everything from, the homeschooling that parents were put into, and the overnight school supplies that had to be delivered through e-commerce, through companies like Amazon and others. What we've really learned through this entire experience, the food, people not wanting to go to the grocery store, the desire to stay in house and trying to bring all those goods into the home, and how resilient that entire network was. And I think it starts to define what the future can be for us when it comes to, logistics and cargo delivery of every size. And, sometimes these crises, we find the silver linings in them, and we find new ways to operate and new ways to serve others. And I think there'll be no exception in this particular crisis.
Sure. Absolutely. You mentioned in your opening comments a little about the drop off in demand for commercial airliners. What changes has Boeing made to address that issue? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really complex, our Boeing commercial business, on one hand, at the macro level looks very simplistic. I mean, there's 4 or 5 product lines. And, in normal times, it runs very efficiently. But it's so complex in a micro environment. And as we entered into COVID, especially, we started to see the impacts, to us and to our entire supply chain. So, the issues that we've been working through are everything through how do we do everything we can to keep the supply chain for these products healthy? How do we keep that transportation system healthy for the long run as best we can? Staying very close with the government and being able to respond to them in any way as they navigated their way of what Congress needed to do and what the rest of the government needed to do to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, all the way through to, looking at, trying to forecast as best we can what will happen. And this is really uncharted territory. We as really a nation, as a world, have never been through anything like this before. And so, making the necessary rate adjustments on our aircraft, working with our customers on deliveries and when they will take aircraft and when they can't take them. It's been definitely a day-to-day running the business operation, more so than ever. And every day there's a uniqueness that pops up. And, the Boeing team has responded incredibly well. The key thing is keeping our customer in front of us as the highest priority, and the traveling public. again, not compromising in any way on safety as we go through that, doing the right thing to make sure that we keep integrity and safety at the forefront of what we're doing. But it's really complex, Alan. There's so many areas that we could kind of dive down to, and I don't even have the expertise to dive down to all of them because there's so many of them. But it's an incredibly complex system. And I can tell you that we're operating 24/7 to try to determine when travel will come back, how do we respond most efficiently, how do we do it in the safest manner, and how do we get to a point with our customers where they're going to be able to respond at the right time to get air service back in place.
Mhm.
I got a chance to fly this weekend, had some family issues that I needed to attend to. So I'm still trying not to fly as much as I normally would. But I will tell you, flew on one of our best customers' airplanes this weekend, Southwest, and, on time, great flight. It was just nice to be back up in the air. Load factor of the aircraft was pretty decent. So I think people are starting to figure out how to work in this environment. But what we really need to get to is on the other side of this pandemic, and make sure that we've got an ecosystem out there for people to travel in that really takes safety first.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned taking a flight. I took a flight this last week as well on one of the majors, and honestly couldn't have felt more comfortable with the protocols and processes that were in place. So I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, and I think we need to acknowledge, we talk about the frontline workers every day, and thank goodness for the medical staff out there who are on the front lines. But let's also not forget, our pilots and our flight attendants and the other airline workers who are there keeping our transportation system going, because it's critical to our economy. As you know, when those passenger flights are going, they also got cargo in the belly that are critical for our infrastructure and our needs. And so there's a lot of people on the front line, and our hats off to them for all the work they're doing.
Absolutely. Kudos to all of them. Let me ask about you a little bit. The industry often attracts people who are passionate about aerospace. Passion is one of the driving forces in our industry. What path did you take to the industry?
Yeah, it's the cyclical nature of the industry always makes it a little bit interesting on what your timing is. But my path started relatively early from the standpoint of I was one of those kids that I lived outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and I would either ride my bike, or when I got my driver's license, drive up to Bradley International Airport, and there was a great place to go park and hang on the fence and watch airplanes take off and land. And I spent quite a bit of time doing that, and just really just enjoyed being around airplanes. So when it came time to college, it was just a natural to take a look at Embry-Riddle, and it just felt right. And then getting down there and being I went to the Daytona Beach campus, but the same goes for Prescott, and also just the ecosystem of our worldwide campus. Being in that environment, is just outstanding. I mean, even today, when I'm down on one of the campuses and that plane flies overhead taking off, you can't help but just lift your head up and watch it take off or an approach. It was kind of in my blood. When I graduated, I hit the industry at a time during one of its downturns. Ended up spending time at the university, working full time, and that was fantastic because I got to help strengthen my relationship with the Embry-Riddle family, and I've got a lot of friends that are still down in the Daytona Beach campus area. It gave me an opportunity to experience the Prescott campus, which is just an absolutely beautiful place to go and learn and live, and then exposure to the worldwide campus. And then I ended up, my last job at Embry-Riddle before I left was being the chief information officer. So I was working on the tech side. I've always kind of been a gadget guy. I get accused of being a gadget guy. And That led me to the tech industry for a while, but I wanted to get back to aviation, and had an opportunity to jump off with former Embry-Riddle president Steve Nordlund to go work a startup together called In Situ back in, I guess that was around 2003-ish timeframe. And it was basically a small company that wasn't working in a garage, but it was working in a commercial garage. And we were able to build up the company, and more importantly, build a product that made a difference in the world. And that's where I got my first taste of working with the defense industry and how critically important that work is. Our work in that area with our unmanned systems, gave me a lot of exposure to what our men and women go through on the front lines, and the real important need that they have, the best cutting edge technology out there to help them survive what they're going through, and making sure that they've got a competitive advantage going forward. And the force protection that we need to provide them has to be the best. And so that was just a wonderful journey. We ended up selling the company to Boeing in 2009. And I ended up joining Boeing at that time formally, and have spent the past 10 or so years here, working my way both around the commercial business, the defense business, off doing some internal corporate startups with Horizon X and Next. And I just had the wonderful opportunity to be around aviation, and people who walk it and talk it, and it just feels right.
Excellent. Well, the UAS industry has grown and advanced a lot in just the last few years, and In Situ was a big part of that. So I know you were on the ground floor of some of those advances. Yeah,
it was fun times. It was truly a startup. As Steve used to always say, you need a combination of where, how you define luck is when preparedness and opportunity intersect. And, fortunately, we spent a lot of time making sure that we were prepared. So when opportunity presented itself, we could move out and make a difference with our customer, which ultimately led to growing the business. And it was fantastic times. We had some, really good team. I have the honor to continue to work with some of my former In Situ colleagues now here at Boeing. Kept them recruited into the family, and it's just it was a very special place, and really enjoyed that part of my career. Yeah. So you were recently appointed as Vice President and General Manager of Phantom Works for the Boeing Defense, Space, and Security Unit of the Boeing Company. Congratulations on that appointment. Yeah, thanks, Alan. I appreciate it. Phantom Works has been involved in many high-profile projects, including developing the X-43 hypersonic aircraft, which set a world record by flying at more than Mach 10 using scramjet engines. Can you share a bit about your role at Phantom Works and its role in developing and applying the latest technology in the aerospace industry? Yeah, I mean, the main goal of Phantom Works is to be, on the front end of what the customer needs. So we spend a lot of time working with our customers on, what their problems are that they have and what they're trying to solve, and focusing on the technologies that we can continue to mature and adapt, prototyping as necessary to burn down risk and to show capability, and then ultimately, attempt to grow those systems into products that our warfighters can use for competitive advantage. It's very complex. Phantom Works represents the advanced work of the entire Boeing defense portfolio. So literally, we are working on everything from seabed to space, as Boeing's defense business covers. Everybody thinks of Boeing as airplanes. Sure. And of course, we have our space business, but we're working on everything from seabed, underwater autonomous vehicles, all the way up to space, from travel to satellite development. So it's very widespread. I'm very honored. I'm absolutely honored, privileged, proud to be able to lead up Phantom Works. It's a awesome organization of incredibly talented people, incredibly smart individuals who really have a level of patriotism that I just personally think is unmatched. I'm honored to be able to represent them, inside the company and outside the company, and they're doing some really good things. And that's going to continue on for a while. And I'm looking for engaging more and more into that, and us really moving out to help our customer.
That's a amazing mission and vision for that organization. So must be a fun place to go to work every day.
It is. Like any job, we have our challenges, but as I mentioned in my opening, the defense business is incredibly important to Boeing right now. When one part of the business is hurting a little bit more, the other part of the business has to step up. And Boeing's got this, very complementary business model where we've got, these two markets that we serve. That is not lost on me, and we've got to wake up every day to not just serve those in Phantom Works to serve our customer, but to also serve all my colleagues inside the company as the business that our CEO Leanne Corrett is leading right now is incredibly important to Boeing, and so we got to bring our best every day, and there's no there's no other way to do it. There's no excuse for that, and so that's what we're driving.
Steve, I'm struck by the fact that much of your career has been spent working on projects related to the future of aviation, whether it be UAS, advanced air mobility, artificial intelligence, and next generation airspace management. So this is the crystal ball question. And as Dr. Butler mentioned in his introduction, you are a visionary in the aviation area. From your perspective, what does the world of aviation look like in maybe 15 or 20 years from now?
Yeah, I think we're on the cusp of some real dynamics in our industry. I think where technology is getting to, we're getting to computer performance that now allows for true artificial intelligence to start to happen. We're getting to an Internet of Things and data collection that truly allows us to do things very differently than we've done in the past, to have a lot more precision in what we're doing, to have a lot more predictability in what we're doing. And then I think, that's more from the technology side. And I think there's also a major shift in society. And, I talk about this a lot here inside the walls of Boeing and sometimes outside the walls of Boeing. And I actually use, my two kids as kind of a benchmark of what people expect in the future. And, my kids, they haven't lived their life yet, really without having, what we would consider when we were their age, a supercomputer in their pocket. That's incredibly intuitive, and it's created a expectation that that many things are on demand and available at any time. And I think we're going to see a shift from the digital side of that to the more physical side. And we're seeing it today. Unfortunately, the pandemic has raised the awareness on that, as I was talking about e-commerce and the expectation for delivery. What will happen when everything is now curbside or delivered? And what will the expectations of people be and consumers be? And aviation plays a really important role in that. And the other thing that causes is people to really value what I think is our absolutely most precious asset we have, which is time. And one of the reasons why we launched Boeing Next to start focusing on future mobility, the future way people and goods would move, both globally, regionally, and in an urban environment, was really around the concept of people are going to become more valuable of their time. So whether it's, is there aviation used differently to move people from across one side of the city to the other so they don't have to sit in traffic, to, how do we take, just here in the United States, for example, unlock all of those landing strips we have in this country for regional transportation, and start to travel differently than we are today, and then ultimately from a global perspective with where we're going with materials and propulsion systems, is there a day where hypersonic travel really is an option? It's not tomorrow, but in 10 years from now, we might have a lot different position on that than we do today. And so I do think there will be a strong evolution in aviation, and it's going to be driven from the societal need and expectations that I think humans are going to have in the world that they live in, as well as the technology emergence that's happening and the scale and the capability that we're seeing of the technology. Not to mention, we're seeing such a development of countries like China and India and others, where frankly, aviation, number one, is usually very effective when it's the first mode of transportation into developing countries, but also, the cost and logistics of putting in other infrastructure, if we do aviation right, it could alleviate that. So I think there's just a number of factors that that will change how we think about travel. And then, as you rightfully pointed out, there's the whole cargo aspect, which for a long time we've kind of taken a little bit for granted in its role in aviation. But it's definitely something that should be on all of our radar of how we move goods from point A to point B in the future.
Yeah, I think the general public has become much more aware of that as a result of the pandemic than they were prior to. And that's an important thing, I think, for people to understand. I agree with you, is the importance of moving cargo from one place to another. It's critically important.
And another point I'll make, and it's been relatively popular in the recent past, and just even in the past couple of months, but you're seeing activities in the investment communities like special purpose acquisition corporations, also known as SPACs, which are these blank check companies that have gone public, and they're raising capital. And if you look at many of the areas that they're looking at to deploy that capital, it's in this new wave of aviation. And frankly, that encourages me. It also is a little scary for me because one thing that is incredibly important is that we have learned a lot about aviation and aerospace in its first 104 years, 5 years, whatever it's been. And we've got to make sure we take those learnings into the next wave of aviation. And as that capital goes in and it draws new leaders and people into that ecosystem, we can't forget, the most important aspects of what we do. And, obviously safety and making sure that we're working, how do we safely integrate autonomous systems, semi-autonomous systems into our national airspaces without at all losing the integrity that we are fortunate to have today. And if anything, how do we increase the integrity of it? How do we use that technology the right way? And so, there's a lot of work to be done. And as you get new entrants into it, I do think it's important. And I think that's where, institutions like Embry-Riddle are so critically important to us, because they provide that leadership and they provide that education and they provide that know-how, and they get to, Embry-Riddle is the first one that gets to touch the next leaders of our industry. And instilling those values at early stages of their education, early stages of their career will make all the difference in the world.
It's a great comment. Thank you for that. Steve, there's a lot of interest in Boeing's commercial airplane division, obviously. During the pandemic, airlines around the world have parked many larger wide bodies, instead relying on the Boeing 787 family of aircraft to operate long-haul services. It's incredible to me that this two-engine airplane can fly nonstop routes such as San Francisco to Singapore, a 17-hour flight. This is a testament to industry innovation that you spoke of, including the increased use of composites. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's in our world of aviation, I can define the 787 as a disruptive technology. I mean, it's fundamentally changed the way the business models and travel occurred in the past. It created the ability to, change the way airlines operate in what were their traditional hub and spoke operations to allow them to go to different markets. So you can have a market like Austin, Texas, having a direct flight to London, or a market like San Jose, California, that can have a direct flight to Beijing. And through the composites, through the great work of the partners with the engine manufacturers, and the overall impact of that aircraft, it really has become a disruptive technology in aviation and how we've traveled in the past. And we're going to continue to exploit those technologies for the good of the traveling public. I think you're going to see the 787 continue to be an incredibly successful airplane. Unfortunately, the pandemic has hit us hardest on the wide body aircraft segment, and it will be the slowest to return, just given the dynamics of the pandemic and the safety of the flying public. We have to make sure that we as a world need to make sure that we're taking all the precautions on allowing passengers to come and go from different countries, that we're making sure that health is at the forefront of what we're doing. So it's a little bit of a setback because of the pandemic for the wide bodies and the 787, but it's a fantastic airplane. I've always enjoyed flying on it. It definitely has changed international travel. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what we're going to see from its impact historically on aviation.
We talked a few minutes ago about Boeing being a big player in the growing commercial space sector as well. And early next month, the United Launch Alliance plans to launch the second orbital test flight of Boeing's Starliner commercial crew vehicle. Of course, this test mission will be uncrewed. But can you share a little bit about Boeing's vision for space and what type of activities the company will be focused on in the coming years?
Yeah, well, we've got a long history in space, and we continue on that path of continuing both space exploration and space transportation, as well as a strong satellite business for communications and data transfer. So Boeing will continue to play in all fronts of that, and you're seeing more competition entering this space. The good work by SpaceX and the work that they've done to really come on and provide the capability that they're providing. It's something that we take notice of, and we definitely want to continue to be as strong of a competitor as we can in this space as well. But as I also mentioned, there's capital going into this space like never before, and I think we're going to continue to see other players enter into this market space. And so we're just got to keep evolving and innovating and making sure that we don't forget our roots and the long history that we have in this segment of the market. That we realize that just because we have strong roots doesn't mean that we're the competitive barriers are down. We've got to go out and perform. We've got to go out and innovate. We got to go out and make sure that we're economical in how we do it. And all those things have to stay at the forefront for serving our customer. We need to take the right steps with our customers, with regard to space travel, because it's so incredibly critical. It's critical from a defense standpoint. It's critical from an economic standpoint. We as a country are going to continue, I think, lead the exploration of what's out there. And we're just, we're proud to be part of it. And we just got to make sure that we don't rest on our laurels of what we've accomplished and continue to innovate going forward. And clearly, in my role in Phantom Works, that's an area where I'll be pretty excited to engage in.
You'll be pretty influential in that position in that regard, no doubt about it. I wanted to ask you about a division of Boeing that probably not that many people have heard about or familiar with, and that's Boeing's Global Service Division. So that division is dedicated to supporting customers really and getting the most out of their aviation asset. Can you speak to the importance of that division for the company, but also for the customer? In other words, the value that a scheduled maintenance program and reliability analysis has for operators.
Yeah, absolutely. We launched Boeing Global Services, I don't know off the top of my head, but probably 4 or 5 years ago as a third business unit within the Boeing Company. And it's been exciting to watch it, grow. And it combines both services for our products that go into the defense market, as well as products that go into our commercial market. And there's synergies there. When you've got a 737 that is operating for the military as a P-8, and you have a 737 that's operating for, one of our airlines, having the knowledge of those operations and data and performance and those things are all beneficial to the larger ecosystem. So it was natural for us to kind of extend our offerings beyond after the sale of the aircraft into the services realm. But also, part of the decision is what we were talking about earlier with regards to how much automation can play in how aircraft are serviced and maintained. And that's a big thrust of ours. And bringing, our full capability of, what we know about the airplanes, the data that we've got, and being able to leverage the technologies to really help our customers, when something's going to fail before it fails. And that's the fundamental premise of trying to create a strong reliability system. And we're pretty excited about it. Again, in Boeing terminology, it's in its infancy, just from a longevity standpoint, and it's taken a little bit of a hit with COVID as we put airplanes on the ground, but they kept busy. I mean, that's the team that is helping us restore aviation travel today as we get those aircraft back ready into flight. And so it's a critical component, and it's one that, Boeing just felt an obligation to serve the market. We felt that we could do a solid job in serving the customer, that we could be competitive in that arena, and overall, provide the right level of safety and performance to our customer and the flying public.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also offers a variety of airplane modification services, doesn't it? So
yeah.
The market for converting passenger aircraft into dedicated cargo aircraft is extending the life of some of the Boeing aircraft. Can you talk a little bit about how that process works?
Yeah, it's, most commercial airplanes are designed for passenger travel, and then go through a conversion process for freight, and that's pretty typical. On the military side, we design aircraft solely for the purpose of cargo mobility. Our C-17 would be a perfect example of an aircraft that is dedicated to that. We've worked with our customers to understand what their needs are, and then transform those airplanes as necessary to become cargo carriers. Probably the most popular one, most recently in the last decade or two, has been the 767, originally designed as a passenger carrier, continues to be a passenger carrier for a lot of airlines today, but is a very strong player in the cargo market. And the cargo market has kept that production line going along for quite some time. It fits an ideal space. The other dynamic that we're seeing is, and we were talking about earlier, this change in e-commerce that's happening. And again, more of the point-to-point distribution that's going on in e-commerce is how 737s are now being used to transfer and convert into cargo aircraft. So that's a dynamic that we see continuing on. We want to get through this pandemic and see how consumer behavior if it changes or adjusts to a new world around e-commerce and those things. But the beauty is our aircraft provide a nice conversion process. Our services organization is definitely engaged in that space, and their work is to put out a very reliable and effective aircraft for cargo delivery.
Excellent. You've spoken about Embry-Riddle a few times. Your affinity for and commitment to this university is strong. You mentioned you were a student here and of course now serve on the Board of Trustees. Can you talk a little about what impact your education had on your successful career? We have a lot of students watching the webinar tonight. I think they would be interested in those remarks.
Great, and I hope to get down to campus to talk to them firsthand at some point once we're able to travel a little bit more freely. But first thing, a couple of things, Alan. Number one, I go back and think about my time walking on campus, and we all can have big dreams, but I never dreamed I'd be working for the largest aerospace company in the world and being able to hold the position that I hold and be able to lead the teams that I lead and influence what we've been able to do. And that is incredibly humbling. I never dreamed, I knew when I was on campus and you'd walk by and see the wall of the Board of Trustees and these great leaders in the aviation aerospace industry, and you never dreamed that your picture might be on that wall one day. And it's incredibly humbling. And I was not the A+ student all the time at Embry-Riddle. It took me a long time to figure out how to learn. So it's just amazing to think back about that journey. And my message to all the students out there is, you guys are all going to be there too. Just work hard, stay dedicated to the value system and the integrity that Embry-Riddle instills in you. I think if you can come out and you can be the best engineer, you can be the best pilot, you can be the best mechanic, you can be the best software engineer, but if you don't leave that campus with the value system that we know is so incredibly important to this industry, I think you're going to hit a ceiling in your career. And so there's nothing more important than that. And if you come out and you're the mediocre engineer or the mediocre software engineer or the mediocre pilot, and you've got that, you may still end up on the top. Keep learning, keep working. And that's what I did. I kept learning, I kept working, and just kept my nose to the grindstone. Never sacrificed family along the way. And that's going to be a balancing act that that your students will have to go through at some point in their life, and they'll know when they hit it. And that's really tough. But it's really keeping that balance and keeping that value system in place. And then, from a content standpoint, I remember sitting in, summer B courses at Embry-Riddle, in a course that was really, I can't remember the name of the course, but it was teaching, the FAR, regulations for, aircraft manufacturing, or, pilot qualification. And I'm like, man, when am I ever going to use this stuff? You use it. As we've been going through, over in Boeing Next, and, talking to the regulators around the world about how do we go and get the right level of certification and qualification for UAV operators or autonomous systems. How do we qualify software for flight safety? I mean, and, being able to go back into your brain and remember different parts of the FARs that you can quote, is something that, it just, you don't realize what you're learning there and how useful it's going to be, down the road. Yeah. It's like when I did get my MBA from another institution, but, one of the greatest classes I ever had in my MBA program was my law class. And it's because you don't realize how important, that plays in your everyday life and later in your career. And so, it's things like that, trust me, those courses that you're going through, and, you're sometimes wondering, why am I learning this? How is this going to, pay off for me? It'll come back, and you'll definitely leverage. But, all in all, I love the school. I love the students. Just the focus that they have. I know when they come and work for us at Boeing, it's not hard to figure out which one are the Embry-Riddle graduates. There's just a special dedication to what we're doing. And I'm incredibly humbled to be part of the university, to be asked to serve on the board of trustees with my colleagues there, who I all admire, and to really represent the institution anytime I can, because I do think it's absolutely a world-class institution with world-class faculty and a leadership team. I mean, which I think has been demonstrated wonderfully through the pandemic. Dr. Butler and his team, how they've managed through this crisis, I think is second to none. And I include that in other observations I've made in corporate world of how they've managed through the crises, and what I've seen in higher education and academics. So it's really, I think the university right now is hitting on all strides.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those comments, and they're much appreciated. And thank you for your ongoing service on the Board of Trustees. I did want to ask you about mentors. What, have mentors played a role in your career? And if so, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, a lot have, but I actually highlight three who've made a enormous impact on me, all from three very different perspectives, and all three of them have connections to Embry-Riddle. Number one is Steve Sliwa, one of the former presidents of Embry-Riddle, and I worked with and worked for out at in situ. It's just been a lifelong friend. Although I got my MBA from a higher education institution, I also often talk about the MBA I got from Steve Sliwa, because I've learned so much from him. He's just been a great mentor and friend. And so that, he's helped me in so many ways. But there's been a couple others. There's a gentleman by the name of Mort Feinberg, who was associated with Embry-Riddle. He was an industrial psychologist. He's now passed away. I fortunately got to know him at a really early age in my 20s. And he just, was a mentor for me throughout my entire career, literally up until the week before his passing. I was on the phone. He would call me once a week when I was working at Boeing and say, what management problem are you trying to solve this week? And, sometimes you're sitting there like, I don't have time for this. And then you start talking to him. And, but what he really taught me was emotional intelligence, and, how incredibly important that is. to have and understand, especially as you work in, very dynamic areas and have to work with people, and understanding how important that is. And then the last one is at Embry-Riddle, Coach Steve Ritter. And Steve would be embarrassed by me saying this because that's how humble he is. But, I just, as a student and as a young person associated with Embry-Riddle, I just got to watch him. And one of the things I tell people is, the way you get mentored is you find somebody you really respect in their leadership skills, and then just mimic them. And so I've always tried to mimic Steve and what he does and who he is. He talks a lot about, in his area of expertise in sports, the fundamentals, the details that you've got to focus on, the little things, the sense of community. You can't win every day. And so how important is it when you lose and how you act than when you win and how you act? And there's these little things that you learn along the way. And those three have been really my lifelong mentors throughout my entire career. There's been others, but nobody rises to the top of those three, and all three of them with a connection back to Embry-Riddle.
Excellent. Wow. That's a strong statement. I know two of those three. Coach Ritter is somebody definitely worth mimicking from a leadership standpoint.
Sure is.
So I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm kind of watching the clock here. So let me just ask you a kind of a wrap-up question. Steve, you've been in the industry long enough now to have seen a few ups and downs. What makes you optimistic about the future?
Well, I stay optimistic, but we can't let our guard down. We cannot just assume that, we respond from every crisis and we'll respond from this one. We got to go after it. We got to dig in. And so we shouldn't take anything for granted. We've just got to be out there. Again, it comes back to that value system that we've got to have, and the integrity we got to have, and we got to keep safety at the foundation of everything that we do, because it's so incredibly important in our business. Mm-hmm. And we just got to go out there and continue to innovate, continue to focus on what is it that the world needs, and how do we go fill that gap. And we'll do it with wings and propulsion systems and other things. So it's very exciting. Let's not take anything for granted, but I do think your students are heading into what I hope is going to be another upswing, and just work hard and keep that value system intact.
Excellent. Steve, thank you so much. That was a tremendous conversation. I know our faculty, students, alumni joining us tonight have all benefited from your comments and inspiration, and I just really appreciate it. On behalf of Embry-Riddle, thank you.
All right, go Eagles.
Go Eagles. Don't forget, you can watch a recap of any of our previous webinars on Embry-Riddle's YouTube channel by going to our webpage and clicking on past presenters. That web address is erau.edu/aviation-outlook, or just Google Embry-Riddle Aviation Outlook. We would also appreciate your feedback on what you've liked and what you would like to see in the future. Our next Aviation Outlook webinar will be a lead up to Embry-Riddle's Aviation Week celebrations in mid-April. On Monday, March 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the Chancellor of our Worldwide campus, Dr. John Watrett, and the Dean of Worldwide's College of Aeronautics, Dr. Ken Witcher, will host aviator, adventurer, and soon-to-be spaceman Jared Isaacman. Isaacman is the 37-year-old founder and CEO of Shift4 Payments, which provides technology solutions for more than 200,000 businesses while securely processing over $200 billion in annual payments volume. Isaacman, considered one of the industry's most influential business leaders, started the company in 1999 from the basement of his family's home when he was 16 years old. Isaacman also co-founded Draken International, which owns and operates the world's largest commercial fleet of ex-military aircraft to support military training objectives around the globe. He is rated to fly commercial and military aircraft and also holds several world records, including a speed around the world flight to raise money and awareness for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. To top off Isaacman's amazing life story, later this year, he will be the mission commander of Inspiration 4, the world's first all-civilian mission to space. The 4-person crew will launch from Kennedy Space Center in a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft atop a Falcon 9 rocket for a multi-day journey in low Earth orbit, which will represent a new era for human spaceflight and exploration. Our thanks again to Alumnus Board of Trustees member and Vice President and General Manager of Phantom Works, Steve Nordlund, and thanks to the many participants from around the world who joined us tonight. For everyone here at Embry-Riddle, thank you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Good night.